Greetings, worldwide viewers, and welcome to Dispatches from a World Gone Mad. My name is Greg M. Schwartz, award-winning investigative reporter, and here with me is my attorney, Kevin Dean, who's been providing me legal advice ever since we met 15 years ago, working on the May 4th task force at Kent State University, thanks to the late, great Alan Canfora, anti-war activist who was shot at Kent State on May 4th, 1970, formed the May 4th task force to help keep the lessons alive of that day, which are still so relevant now. And we're going to do a whole show about Alan at a not too distant point in the future. But today, our focus is going to be on the absolute insanity that occurred this week when an unruly mob of MAGA morons stormed the U.S. Capitol at President Donald Trump's urging, making him guilty of sedition and treason.
So that's a good question, Greg, was this a coup? And so therefore, was it a failed coup? And it seems like this is really an incredible moment in history, but it's almost so incredible that it's hard to believe. Do you think this was really a coup or an attempted coup?
You know, I thought it was going to be a big nothing burger because sure, he was going to have a mob of cult members that were going to march to the Capitol building, but I figured that we would have standard security measures. You saw that they had plenty of security during the Black Lives Matter protests this summer, and so I just couldn't even imagine that we would get to where we were. But obviously, the defenses weren't what they should be, and so there's a lot of questions about that right now. And all signs point toward an inside job, someone telling the police to stand down or not providing enough backup, shades of November 22nd, 1963, when the Dallas police were told to stand down. That's a whole nother can of worms. And so, yes, this was a coup. Trump is guilty of treason. His co-conspirators in the GOP, many of them are guilty of sedition and should be expelled from Congress, as Representative Cori Bush has a resolution aiming for. And so I'd really like to see Congress step up and do their job, because if we don't punish these people, then they'll just feel like they can go on in doing this further in the future.
If you recall, for about the 2 weeks leading up to Wednesday and the count, I was urging you to get on this, to do the first show that night, Wednesday. I said, there is going to be something that goes down on Wednesday that the whole world will be talking about. And what better day to begin the dispatches from a world gone mad on what will surely be quite a newsworthy day. And you didn't believe me. You thought that it would just go off a little bit, quite uneventful, with some counting and some objections from Senator Cruz whining on the floor. But obviously that didn't happen. But I don't know, what efforts do you take to keep your pulse on the right-wing lunacy that we've seen just boiling over to a fervor over the last 4 years?
Well, that's a good question. You know, you can't just rely on the mainstream media. Although at times, it's at times like this where I will watch a lot more of MSNBC and CNN than I normally would, which is normally not very much at all. But during times like this, they step up and they really do a good job. Most of the time, they're guilty of their own form of propaganda. But so, I mean, there's been some very good reporting there this week from those outlets, even though they have that. It gets into this whole thing. See, all the right-wingers think corporatocracy bias, the mainstream, and Trump has exploited this flaw in our system, because we know that there's a corporate bias in the media. And so he exploited that to convince all these cult members that it's all fake news all the time. And these people, and I know this intimately because I've been participating in a Facebook group that is run by a former friend of mine, girl, who was a co-founder of the Fish group, the Funky Bitches, which was the greatest fan group of the 90s. This woman, however, turned to the dark side in recent years and became a full-on first she was just quasi-libertarian backing Rand Paul. Then she became a full-on Trump propaganda minion, pushing his propaganda practically nonstop. So she's got this group with all these other right-wingers and cult members in it, and they keep pet trolls from the left, of which I'm one. And so I get to see it up close, and it's just mind-boggling. These people are immune to facts and reason and logic. They're completely brainwashed, and it doesn't matter how you try to debunk the nonsense that they believe in. They have been convinced by Trump that the mainstream media is all fake news all the time. You can cite article after article after article from all these different sites, and they'll say, oh no, that's left bias. Oh no, that's bias, 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 bias. Anything that doesn't lick Trump's balls is biased to them. And so we have this disconnect that is, I mean, I don't know how we get out of this mess, because we've brought this on ourselves with the corporate consolidation of the media, to where you now have just 6 transnational corporations owning 90% of the media. And so that has brought us to this moment. And thanks, Bill Clinton, for the 1996 Telecommunications Act that opened the door for this Orwellian media consolidation. And so, we really need to fight back against that. And I suppose this new program right here is an effort to try to help do that.
Just for our viewers, perhaps, Greg, you can put a link in the comments to your story that you wrote about our experience with Rand Paul, I think back in, was it 2014?
Oh, yeah.
During the primaries,
yes,
when he was running for president. But
yes. So for our viewers who might not know, we're both big fans of Hunter Thompson, of course. And when we were back there at Kent State, we would say someday we need to take a journalist attorney trip to Las Vegas, which we wound up doing in the summer of 2013, when we went to see Widespread Panic there at the Hard Rock Hotel. And none other than Kentucky Senator Rand Paul was making a speech that day down at, was it at the Gold Nugget? And Kevin here found out about that. I got us on this list, and we infiltrated of Hunter and Oscar went to the drug conference in Fear and Loathing. And I wrote an article about that. And oh, you know what? It's interesting though, because back then I thought Rand Paul might be the guy to fear, who would rise to this level of what's the word I'm looking for? Demagogue. And unfortunately, he has been one of Trump's biggest suck-ups and enablers.
He hasn't, but he didn't jump on the ship of contesting the election, right?
Well, he sure pushed a lot of other bullshit for him.
I mean, you point out, though, that the concerns for the consolidation and corporatization of the media aren't unique to the right. And I think it's something the left has been complaining about for 20 years,
Yeah.
And when the coup was happening, or the attempted coup, the insurrection, whatever you want to call it, to me, I had a question, there's one of 3 things happening here. 1, the Capitol Police are just incompetent. 2,
no,
this was an inside job orchestrated by Trump, a real coup effort. This was an actual coup effort.
Yes.
Or 3, it's something a little different, in the sense that maybe it's planned inaction. What do you think about those 3 options? What do you, and then
categorically reject number 1. It was not mere incompetence.
Just give me a second to add to that. So, but one of the other options, though, that I realized after I had those first 3 options is, it may not be incompetence, it may not be an inside job, and it may not be planned in action. It's just the fact that we're living in a police state that is run by racist, white supremacist police officers, and that when white people come to the Capitol, we have law enforcement institutions that don't see any amount of violent, armed militias as being a threat to our government, simply because they're white. That what happened in DC on Wednesday was simply the fact that we are run with law enforcement that are simply racist, and that they when they could view any number of white people coming together with overtly violent themes and purposes and not really see it as a threat because they're white people. Whereas black people are seen as an a priori threat. No matter what they're doing, law enforcement sees them as a threat, and they're going to respond and prepare accordingly. And so to me, maybe it's not nefarious. Maybe it wasn't a coup. Maybe it wasn't planned in action. And I guess you could chalk it up to incompetence, but really it would be incompetence based on inaction, based on racist views.
No. I mean, those are factors, but no, racism, I'm sure that's part of it, but this was nefarious and insidious. I would like to quote the French police official from the Business Insider article. It is unthinkable that there was not a strong police cordon on the outskirts of the complex. Fences and barricades are useless without strong police enforcement. This is when you start making arrests, targeting key people that appear violent, anyone who attacks an officer, anyone who breaches a barricade. You have to show that crossing the line will fail and end in arrest. I cannot believe the failure to establish a proper cordon was a mistake. These are very skilled police officials, but they are federal, and that means they ultimately report to the president. This needs to be investigated. When the crowd reached the steps of the building, the situation was over. The police are there to protect the building from terrorist attacks and crime, not a battalion of infantry. That had to be managed from hundreds of meters away unless the police were willing to completely open fire, and I could suspect why they were not. And so who works in counterintelligence for a NATO member, agreed that the situation could only be seen as a coup attempt, no matter how poorly considered and likely to fail. Its implications might be too huge to immediately fathom. And so someone told the proper forces to stand down. This is not just racist cops saying, yeah, have them have at it. Sure, there probably were some of those people out there. Obviously, we saw them taking selfies with these people inside the building. But no, there should have been far more security forces from other agencies outside there to prevent the mob from even getting up to the Capitol doors. And so that's where the Democrats really need to dig in. And I'm glad to hear that Paul Bowman from the squad is looking into this. Now something's rotten in Denmark, in this case, in the White House.
And, that was certainly a concern that I was sharing with you leading up to Wednesday, with President Trump replacing folks in the Pentagon and people stepping down and Barr stepping down.
Right. See, that was a giveaway right there.
There were these internal rumblings suggesting that maybe Trump really was trying to orchestrate a coup when the votes were being counted. So, I didn't anticipate it coming in the form of the QAnon shaman, rushing the gates of the Capitol and standing in the Senate dais. But if you think about what would a coup look like, I don't think that that's exactly what a coup would look like. And that leads me back to my other theory, is that the deep staters got deep stated. And as this was going down, could Trump really pull this off? Did he really think that he was going to be able to get a wave of citizen support taking over the Capitol, stopping the vote, and ultimately resulting in some sort of political change where he's deemed to be the winner of the presidency? I don't know. Who knows what that man actually thinks? But when you look at the immediate response in the media, and then this trickles down through the corporate social media world, where Trump's now been banned from Twitter indefinitely today, Facebook and Instagram. This couldn't have worked out any better for the Democrats and for the institution Republicans, in the sense that by linking Trump to a failed coup and blaming him for planning and carrying this out, going down to the steps of the Capitol essentially and urging these people on, this has resulted in a complete 180 and shift of what the Democrats were going to be facing over the next 4 years. We knew that Trump was planning on organizing a rally on Inauguration Day and basically starting his 2024 campaign. And instead, what we have are pictures of the QAnon shaman standing in the Capitol being equated with Trumpism. And that now Trumpism is being rejected totally as a completely invalid political theory, and anybody who wants to support them is now equated with the QAnon shaman. And so Did the deep
I don't know.
staters deep stated? I mean, it's a real possibility. You know,
but you're taking it a little too far. Not because Trump still has support. Some of the GOP death cult in Congress are starting to turn on him, but others are still thinking that that's, you know, you have to support him to get the support of his cult members. And so let's take Lindsey Graham, for example. This guy has been one of Trump's biggest suck-ups over the past 4 years. He finally said enough's enough. Too little, too late, Lindsey. Day late and a dollar short. As he found out, they had this clip on today. He's going to the airport, and all these Trump cult members are like screaming and yelling at him for giving up on defending the stolen election, of which there's no evidence for, of course. But these cult members are completely off the deep end in the Kool-Aid. And so even when a suck-up like Lindsey Graham says, yeah, that's it. No, it's still enough. It'll never be enough for these people. And so we have a serious problem with these MAGA morons, as I like to call them, who still nothing is going to convince them. They are totally in the cult where anything Trump says goes. This election has been stolen. The deep state is controlling everything. And, you know, I try to tell these people, Trump is not an outsider taking on the so-called deep state. If he was, his foul regime wouldn't have been stocked with neocon retreads like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo and skull and bones scum like Steve Mnuchin and Steven Schwartzman. I mean, he's had Mnuchin at Department of Treasury in charge of looting the Treasury for the 1% this whole time. You don't get more insider than skull and bones. And that's the real insidious conspiracy, I think, because no matter which party occupies the White House, the skull and bones men are there in the ear of the president. Look at Obama. He had bonesman Austin Goolsbee as his economic advisor. And then last year, Pete Buttigieg. Who popped up? Austin Goolsbee as his economic advisor. And now Biden's already got Don Kerry, I know skull and bonesman, heading his climate task force. And so I think this is something that the American people really need to take a closer look at. I know there's a lot of people say, oh, skull and bones is just a fraternity, blah, blah, blah. Well, you really ought to look deeper at how they're there in the inner circle of the president every time, no matter which party occupies the White House.
And those are very valid concerns. And that's what might get to the point of possibly the deep staters getting deep stated. With this attempted coup. And you know, it's impossible to try to find common ground with Trumpies because like you said, they for inexplicable reasons believe that this rich brat is looking out and fighting the system when all he's had in his own mind is his own interest the whole time. And so but the concerns though that there are these deeper connections across the ruling class that transcend party and and really are pushing the future of this country in the wrong direction are legitimate. It's just that the Trumpies seem to have misplaced their faith, in Trump. And I don't know that criticizing the Democratic Party, is something that is unfounded, right? So it's not like the Democrats are without problems. The two-party system is a problem. And I think most members of the left will agree with that. But one thing the Trump administration has done more effectively than I ever imagined is unify the left under the banner of neoliberal democratic policies. I just think, looking at you and thinking about our debates about Bernie Sanders and what to do once he lost the primary this time around, it's just unbelievable how much unity has come under Biden when we all know that he's not really the answer that we're looking for when we're talking about a political revolution. But when you talk about what happened recently, today with Lindsey Graham or yesterday with this mob attacking and confronting him, not really an attack, just verbal heckling. And when we talked about the speech that McConnell gave on the floor of the Senate late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, we're seeing already the liberal rehabilitation of McConnell and Lindsey Graham. And today, Joe
Uh,
Biden gave a speech
uh,
today. Joe Biden gave a speech today, and he said, we need the Republican Party, right? And so, to be fair to Biden, he was saying that we need a different Republican Party. We need to move on from Trump's Republican Party. But when you think about what the Republican Party has been for the last 50 years since Nixon, we don't need that Republican Party. And we really don't need the Democratic Party of Bill Clinton and Joe Biden either. And I think that the people of the United States, if we can get past this partisan BS and recognize the real issues we have, starting from the top down, the problems come from the ruling class. I think
it's a class war of the 1% on the 9%. As far as Joe Biden goes, unfortunately, it's context. Trump turned out to be such a menace to society that Joe Biden looked like a cross between FDR and JFK in comparison. And so that's, in 20, we all knew Bernie voted, and the left was very divided. Hillary Clinton was a very divisive figure, and a lot of people thought that it was rigged anyways and Clinton would win, so why did they even need to bother supporting her? They thought, well, she can steal the primary, she can steal the general. Of course, not so simple. So this time, after we've lived through 4 years of this world gone mad, descending into even further and further chaos, I think a lot of people just said, no, that's it. It's too bad that Bernie couldn't win the night, but we have to go all in to defeat Trump because this is fascism at our door here. And so I'm still optimistic that Bernie will be able to get some things done here with Biden. He's going to be chairman of the budget committee. We've got the squad has nearly doubled in size now. I think the political revolution has made great strides over the past 5 years. You have a lot of leftists who are very still disgruntled about all this. But when you think back to how things were when Obama came in, no, we're not going back to that. We've come way too far. We've been through way too much. We won't get fooled again. There's going to be no honeymoon for Joe Biden. And I think Biden knows that he needs to step up and deliver big because of what a fucking mess Trump has left here. It was bad enough even before the pandemic hit. And now add that, it's an economic disaster on so many levels. And so I would like to give Biden and a new Democratic Congress a chance to show us they've learned a lesson or two and can do something positive before the left just starts accusing everyone of being a sellout.
And I would like to talk a little more about what we can expect from Biden the first 120 days and moving forward. But I wanted to get your thoughts first on Trump's social media ban. We saw first Facebook and Instagram banning Trump indefinitely, and today we see Trump being banned indefinitely from Twitter. And of course, obviously, there's not a First Amendment concern there because these are corporations. This isn't government censorship. But one thing that social media has done is it's allowed both celebrities, presidents, and people like you and me to have an audience and to speak what's on our mind. But leading up to Trump's ban, we've seen massive censorship on social media, YouTube, and other channels. What do you think about Trump's ban on social media?
It was overdue. I mean, they had to. The guy has become a treasonous menace to democracy. But as far as social media and the slippery slope of censorship, I think there was a very good clip on MSNBC where they interviewed Roger McNamee, who is the Silicon Valley entrepreneur who's also a musician here in the Bay Area in the band Moon Alice, really nice guy who also made a lot of money in the tech industry. And so he's kind of like a hippie tech guy. And he made a very good point. He also wrote an editorial for Wired that was published today or yesterday about how we need to fix big tech, and not with so much censorship per se, but by forcing them to change the way that they do business. Because he was citing numbers on how Facebook feeds you these recommendations on these hate groups based on, for people who are into that stuff, based on your interests, right? They're taking in everything we do. They know everything we like. They know what kind of music we like. They know what kind of politics we have. And so then they feed you these groups because they want to get your attention and keep you on the platform. And so there's a problem with the business model of Facebook and Twitter, mainly Facebook, I think. And so I think I would like to see Roger McNamee appointed to a task force to address this issue, because he's someone who knows Silicon Valley from inside and out, and he's got the right idea here, I think, because when you talk about censorship, who's gonna pick, who's going to be the decider of what's dangerous or what's, fascist? That's a very slippery slope. But he made this great point about how it's really the business model that these companies like Facebook are using. And so that's what needs to be addressed. And I'll post a link to that Wired article on our Facebook page.
The underlying philosophy behind the First Amendment is that the antidote to bad or stupid ideas are good ideas, right? I don't know if we're seeing this proven to be wrong with Trumpism. When you look at what these people believe and how unmoored from reality it is related to the pedophilia rings and some really wild stuff. I find it entertaining to consider, but it does seem to be leading to violence and unhinged people taking to the streets and attacking people. And I don't know what the answer is, because I think that the new technology that we've seen unfold over the last 25 years has allowed us to communicate with one another and spread positive ideas. And my concern is that, back to this idea of the deep staters getting deep stated, is that the backlash to the Trumpism is also going to shut down legitimate communication that is going to be needed to form resistance and organize against the corporate technocracy that we're seeing develop. A new form of government and technology that is going to be more in control over every aspect of human life moving forward, whether it be through the pandemic's innovations requiring health wallets to establish vaccinations and whatnot, versus modeling the Chinese programs for creating social points and restricting your access to public activities based on your social score. These things are very real concerns, and what you need to institute and bring in such a dystopian future is something that people can get behind, and that's what we're seeing now. And so I don't know the best answer to it, but I think that we need to recognize that partisan politics like this could provide cover for a series of really technologically dystopian policies and laws that we can say is beyond the scope of the First Amendment, but really will have the effect of limiting the potentials of what should be a cusp of a genuine political revolution that has been aided by social media.
Indeed, these are valid concerns, of course. And like I was just saying, McNamee has the solution, where you have to force these companies to alter their business model, because once you start getting into censorship, it's just a slippery slope. And so the business model that encourages the fomenting of these hate groups by continuing to feed them to the people who are interested in them, that's something that really needs to be addressed. And we're just about at our half-hour point here. So I think we're coming to the end of this inaugural episode of Dispatches from a World Gone Mad.
I did want to get your take on what do you think should the future hold for Trump? He's got about 11 days left in office. 25th Amendment.
Oh, yes.
Impeachment.
So
if you can just pause real quick.
About Trump, right? And I'm going to ask you about the legal question. Okay.
All right. So what do we do about Trump? 25th Amendment, impeachment, or do we just wait him out?
Yeah, boy, that's the real question. And so 25th Amendment would be nice, except his cabinet are too much of a bunch of suck-up lackeys with no morals or ethics. They're jumping ship now like the rats that they are. And so we're not going to be able to rely on the 25th Amendment. We should impeach him again. It looks like the Democrats are getting ready to do that on Monday. But then will the Senate, right? We don't have the new Senate yet, do we? And so the Senate, how many will enough Republicans vote to evict him? They should. Although then it raises another problem. If they impeach him, then Pence can pardon him, right? We need to fix that, because a president should not be able to commit treason and then get pardoned. You shouldn't be allowed to be pardoned for sedition and treason. So the Democrats need to do something about that. Trump needs to be prosecuted for treason, and he needs to go to jail. And so the Trump crime family needs to be put out of business, and the Democrats need to step up. Now, I know it's going to inflame the Trump cult, but if you allow this to pass and you let Trump get off scot-free, then that's just going to embolden more people like him, and we're going to get another demagogue like him. And so, you know, we're in a very dangerous moment for America here, as everyone knows. And so what can we do legally to prevent him from being pardoned?
The pardon power is pretty much absolute, right? So if he were to resign or be impeached, you know, he would probably resign before the vote occurred, right? So a la Nixon. I mean, just so that he could be pardoned, and then potentially, I mean, there's some concerns with if you're impeached, if you can run for office again for presidency, and then if also you're entitled to the benefits of the presidency. And so given that would occur right at the end.
Right, he does not deserve the benefits of the presidency. You know, that needs to be stopped.
So, I mean, I don't have much faith in Trump making intelligent decisions, but I believe at his core, he's motivated by self-interest. And so,
of course, that's all mammals are.
Well, more Trump than anybody, right? I mean, he's the most self-interested person ever. So I could definitely see him resigning, getting the pardon, avoiding impeachment, and then coming back and still running in 2024.
No, he needs to be prosecuted. There's aren't they talking about prosecuting him for state offenses?
Yeah, New York is definitely looking into all that.
No, they need to go hard at this guy. We cannot let this guy have another chance at public life.
I could see him run a campaign from his cell, like Jim Trafficant did, you know, the Youngstown guy from Ohio.
Well, I mean, he'll just have Don Jr. or any of the other suck-ups. This is going to be a key question this week, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens with the impeachment proceedings, and we'll talk about that next week on Dispatches from a World Gone Mad.